This program is one of a series which accompanies the General Electric LM2500 instructions for the replacement of the fuel pump and is designed as a supplement to the printed work package found in the maintenance manual. Aft looking forward, the fuel pump is mounted onto the outer left aft side of the transfer gearbox at the 7 o'clock position. The main fuel control is attached to the aft of the fuel pump. The fuel filter is mounted to the right side of the pump, and the power lever angle actuator and its bracket are attached to the lower left side of the pump on the marine model of the LM2500 engine. Before the fuel pump may be removed, the PLA actuator throttle linkage and the variable stator vane feedback cable must be detached from the main fuel control. Then the main fuel control, the fuel filter, and the PLA actuator must be removed from the fuel pump. For detailed information describing the removal of these components, refer to work packages WP 20700, 20900, and 21500 in the maintenance manual for the marine model of the LM2500 gas turbine. To detach the PLA actuator mounting bracket, remove 2 nuts and 2 washers from the top 2 forward studs and 3 nuts and 3 washers from the 3 aft studs. To prepare for the removal of the fuel pump, place a plastic container underneath the pump to catch the fuel which will be drained. Remove the drain plug found on the underside of the fuel pump. This is the large plug toward the front of the fuel pump. Allow the fuel to drain off into the plastic container. Remove and discard the O-ring from this plug. If the fuel pump is to be reinstalled, place a new lubricated O-ring onto the drain plug and reinstall it into the drain port. Torque the plug to 20 to 50 inch-pounds. If the fuel pump is to be overhauled or replaced, simply reinstall the drain plug finger tight without an O-ring. Disconnect the actuator pilot pressure hose from the fuel pump. Hoses must be handled carefully to prevent kinking due to excessive bending. Kinking can break the hose liner and cause a fuel leak. Also, remove the union and its O-ring. Discard the O-ring. Next, remove the fuel supply hose connecting the fuel pump and the base. Remove and discard the gaskets at each end and cover the openings. Then remove the other plug labeled Boost Discharge and its O-ring from the upper right face of the fuel pump. The O-ring may be removed from the plug and discarded. Now disconnect the fuel filter outlet pressure hose from the upper right face of the fuel pump. Remove the union and discard the O-ring. Also, disconnect the fuel filter inlet pressure hose from the 6 o'clock position underneath the fuel pump. Remove this union. Remove the O-ring from the union and discard the O-ring. At the gearbox connection, loosen the long locking bolt to allow the quick assembly disconnect ring or quad ring to be rotated. It is not necessary to remove the locking bolt, ball seat washer, and packing from the bracket unless these parts are damaged. To remove the fuel pump, loosen the quad ring by striking the lug at the bottom of the ring in a counterclockwise direction with a soft-faced hammer. Rotate the ring until it stops. To prevent damage to the drive spline and to avoid dropping the pump, support the pump by hand during the quad ring removal. Carefully remove the pump from the gearbox by moving it aft in a straight line until the drive spline clears. Remove the O-ring from the drive spline and discard it. Also, remove and discard the large seal from the gearbox. After removal, do not allow the fuel pump to rest on either splined end. Finally, plug all of the open ports with plastic plugs and install plastic caps on both splines to protect the spline teeth. This completes the removal of the fuel pump. To install the new fuel pump, begin by lubricating 3 new O-rings and installing them onto the 3 unions. Then install these unions into the correct positions on the new fuel pump. Torque the pilot pressure hose union on the left side of the fuel pump to 135 to 150 inch-pounds. Also, torque the upper fuel filter outlet pressure hose union labeled FLT out to 135 to 150 inch-pounds. The lower fuel filter inlet pressure hose union, labeled FLT in, should be torqued to 180 to 200 inch-pounds. Lubricate and install a new O-ring onto the upper plug labeled Boost Discharge and install the plug into the pump. Torque the plug from 135 to 150 inch-pounds. With the spring tangs forward, install the new lubricated seal into the gearbox and snap it over the counterbore inner diameter. Install a new lubricated O-ring onto the forward drive spline of the fuel pump. Lightly lubricate the splines with gas turbine lube oil. Rotate the quad ring counterclockwise until it stops. Then, carefully align the pump drive shaft with its mating spline, align the dowel pins with their mating holes, and insert the pump into the quad ring. Rotate the quad ring clockwise until the locking tabs on the quad ring are engaged with the locking tabs on the pump flange. If the ball seat washer, the locking bolt, the packing, or the bracket were removed earlier because of damage, replace the damaged pieces and reinstall these parts in the following manner. Install the ball seat washer onto the locking bolt and insert it into the bracket. Install the packing onto the bolt end so that it will be located between the bracket and the quad ring lug. Screw the locking bolt into the quad ring. Torque the bolt to 190 to 230 inch-pounds. Safety wire the locking bolt to the 2 bolts on the bracket. Connect the fuel filter inlet pressure hose to the union labeled FLT in on the lower right side of the fuel pump. Torque this coupling to 270 to 300 inch-pounds. Then connect the fuel filter outlet pressure hose to the union labeled FLT out on the upper right side of the fuel pump. Also torque this coupling to 270 to 300 inch-pounds. Now connect the actuator pilot pressure hose to its union on the left side of the fuel pump. Torque this coupling to 135 to 150 inch-pounds. Reinstall the fuel filter and the main fuel control. For the details of these procedures, refer to work packages 20900 and 20700 in the LM2500 maintenance manual. After inspecting the fuel supply hose for lining damage, remove the protective cover from the pump and position a gasket on the pump pad and on the base flange. Attach the hose with 4 bolts and washers at the pump and 4 bolts and nuts at the base flange. Torque the bolts to 100 to 130 inch-pounds. Reattach the PLA actuator mounting bracket to the fuel pump using 3 nuts on the 3 aft studs and 2 nuts and 2 washers on the 2 forward studs. Torque these 5 nuts to 100 to 130 inch-pounds. Now install Now install the PLA actuator according to the instructions found in Work Package 21500. When the main fuel control has been reinstalled, the PLA actuator throttle linkage and the variable stator vane feedback cable must be reattached and rigged in accordance with the maintenance manual. Finally, perform the reduced power check described in Work Package 10500. The replacement of the fuel pump is complete. For a printed description of this procedure, refer to the maintenance manual for the marine model of the General Electric LM2500 gas turbine.